Drop a like and do share. Leave your comments and do not forget to subscribe for more videos.
Good morning, students. Welcome to edupediaworld.com, your online gateway to the world of invaluable knowledge. Welcome to the new session. Now, students, let's try to understand the concept and usefulness of compounding using a few calculations. Now, one thing, students, as I made myself clear at the very outset itself, that in this particular topic I have incorporated certain handwritten slides wherein I have tried to derive some formula. I have tried to take you through the simple derivations so that you people can understand the concept and it should stay in your mind for a very long time rather than simply force you with the final formula. So try to have some patience and try to look through the formula in a very simple manner. I've tried to make them very simple. Although they are handwritten, the concept shall be very clear to you if you are following me very carefully. Now, the formula for calculating the future value of a single or a lump sum cash flow is as under. Before I proceed, let me make myself clear that what exactly is a lump sum cash flow. How do we define the word a lump sum cash flow? So, lump sum cash flow can be defined as any cash flow, whether it is inflow or outflow, which is a one-time receipt and payment. I once again repeat myself, any one-time receipt or payment of a cash is termed as a lump sum cash flow. Whenever I use the word cash flow, whenever we use the word cash flow, it actually means it may either be the cash inflow or be the cash outflow. So cash flows is not taken into isolation. The word cash flow doesn't mean only an inflow of cash or an outflow. Rather, it means both. But depending upon the conditions, we shall be using either the inflow or the outflow. But when we are using the word a lump sum cash flow, it means lump sum cash flow refers to any one-time receipt or payment of cash. It can be both. Any one-time receipt of cash can also be a lump sum cash flow, or any payment of cash can also be known as a lump sum cash outflow. But lump sum means it should be one time. It should not be fragmented. It should not be intermittent. There should not be no recurring. So any one-time receipt or payment of any cash flow is termed as a lump sum cash flow or a single cash flow. Now, students, the formula for a single or lump sum cash flow is as under. Fn is equal to P times of 1 plus I raised to the power n. I once again repeat, it is Fn is equal to P within brackets 1 plus I raised to the power n. It is a very simple formula, my dear students, and it is a very useful one as well. And this formula will help you in solving the future value of money for any amount, for any length of time against any rate of interest. So there is a simple formula and there is a very shortcut for this as well. There are certain annuity tables which I shall be telling you how to use, but it is my sincere submission that rather than simply mugging up this simple formula, we should try to understand that how exactly this formula has been derived. As I've already told, we should be trying to understand the actual derivation, wherein you can never forget that how exactly this formula is being operated. So Fn over here refers to the future value of the cash flow. The future value of the cash flow. P is equal to, P stands for the present cash flow. Fn stands for the future value of the cash flow. So what do you mean by the word Fn? Fn means the future value of the cash flow after n number of years. N over here stands for the length of time. N stands for the number of years. So Fn refers to the future value of the cash flows after n number of years in the future. So it always refers to an n number of years of the cash flow in the future. Now P is the present cash flow. So P refers to that cash flow which we are receiving or paying at time 0 or at the current time, and P refers to that cash flow for which we are interested to know the future cash flow. So let me make myself very clear. The formula says Fn is equal to P within bracket 1 plus I raised to the power of n. It means we are interested in knowing the future value of the cash flows P which we are receiving or paying right now, and we are trying to see how exactly the P shall be growing in future and take the shape of Fn if P is growing against I rate of interest compounded annually and raised to the power n, that is for n number of years. So simply put, this means that through this formula, that is Fn is equal to P multiplied by 1 plus I raised to the power of n, we are trying to ascertain the future value of the present cash flow. So the future value of the present cash flow, that is P, future value we want to ascertain, and that value should be Fn. That is the future value of the present cash flow after n number of years, when the present cash flow P is growing by I% compounded annually for n number of years. So once again students, so Fn is equal to P within bracket 1 plus I raised to the power n refers to the fact that how exactly the present cash flow P is growing by I% rate of interest compounded annually for n number of years, and what shall be the future value, what shall be the future lump sum value of the P after I number of years, which has grown by n, how it should be looking after it has grown into Fn after n number of years. So Fn stands for the future value of P which has grown by I% rate of interest compounded annually for n number of years. Now 1 plus I to the power of n is the compounded value factor. So one more thing students, 1 plus I raised to the power n within bracket 1 plus I raised to the power n stands for the compounded value factor, which can be easily ascertained through your future value tables. But instead of taking you through the shortcut, first I will try myself to explain you that how exactly we got the term 1 plus I to the power of n. One thing keep in mind very carefully, you should be thinking over here that how exactly this 1 is coming. This is a very important question, and this question lays the foundation for the entire discussion of compounding and discounting. The point over here is that students try to understand that where exactly in the formula 1 is coming. Why is it so that we simply didn't multiply P with I to the power of n? One question might be crossing your mind. Try to apply your mind over here. I'm asking a simple question. Why is it so that while calculating the Fn or the future value of P, we are not simply multiplying P with I% the rate of interest which is compounded annually for n number of years? Why is it so that we are including 1 in the formula? Can you think of it? Can you just apply your mind? I'm waiting for you for a couple of minutes. Try to understand. My simple question is that why is it so that in the formula of calculating the future value, that is the Fn, we are not multiplying P directly with I raised to the power of n, and why is it so that we are involving 1 in the formula? Please think over it. I'm giving you 2 minutes time. Then I shall be proceeding, and in the process I shall be making the concept clear to you that where exactly we are getting 1 from. So please take 2 minutes of time and just think over it. Okay students, I hope by now most of you might have inferred that where exactly this 1 is coming from. So let's take it up from here on and let's try to understand where exactly we got the 1 from. Now let's talk about the derivation of the formula. See, our formula has been derived as follows. Now students, while discussing regarding the compounding part, the process of compounding, you must remember that I discussed one point that compounding is a process wherein the interest which we are earning for the first year, that interest becomes a new principal for the second year. Now suppose for the first year we are taking it as F1. F1 stands for the first year. Now F1 is equal to P plus P into I. So what does this mean, that P plus P into I, where P is the actual principal and P into I is the interest on the principal. Once again students, F1 stands for P plus P into I, where P is the principal and P into I is the interest on the principal. Suppose you are given an option to invest 100 USD. Suppose 100 USD you are investing into a bank for 1 year, which shall be giving you a return of 10% compounded annually. So what will be your future amount at the end of 1 year? It goes without saying that from upon your 100 USD, you shall be calculating the 10% of 100, that is, you shall be getting $10 more. So your actual principal or P is your 100 USD, while your I is your 10 USD. So how much will be the amount which you shall be getting at the end of the year? It goes without saying, it is a very simple thing. You shall be getting 110 USD. You are getting 110 USD. So in actuality, what did you do? In order to calculate your F1 for 1 year, you took 100 USD, that was your actual principal, and then plus within bracket P into I. It means 100 into 10%. So 100 into 10% becomes your 10 USD. So now at the end of the first year, that is where your n is equal to 1. Therefore, Fn1 becomes your 100 plus 10. So 100 means what? 100 is your actual principal, and 10 was 10% of 100, that is 100 into I, or 100 into 10% thereupon. So ultimately you are getting 110 USD at the end of the first year. 110 USD becomes your future value of the 100 USD which grew by 10% interest rate compounded annually at the end of the 1 year. So your $100 grew up to 110, wherein your principal was 100 and your $10 was the additional interest income which you got via 10% interest return on the principal of 100. So finally you are getting 110 at the end of the second year. Now the question arises when again we are putting the formula. So F1 is equal to P plus P into I. So F1 is equal to your P plus PI, that is P into I stands for the PI. So when we are taking the P common, we are left with 1 plus I. Therefore for F1, when we are taking the P common, we are left with 1 plus I. Therefore F1 becomes P plus PI. It becomes P plus PI. So when we are taking the P as a common factor, we are left with 1 plus I. For the first year, listen to me carefully, students. I'm repeating myself once again. For the first year, P was my original principal and P plus I was the interest which we earned on the existing principal. So at the end of the first year, our total cash receipt was shown in the form of a formula. It becomes F1 is equal to P plus P into I or P plus PI. P plus PI is the total receipt which you got at the end of the first year. From the point of view of formula, your F1 becomes P plus PI, and in terms of the numerical value, it becomes P plus PI eventually becomes 110 USD, which was 100 plus 10% of 100. Now it's simple algebra. So when F1 is equal to P plus PI, so P taken common, we are left with 1 plus I. It means 1 plus I means what? P plus 1 will be P plus P plus I will be PI. So P plus I within bracket is nothing but it is a P into I. So it is from this formula that we got the 1 over here. I hope I have made myself clear and you have understood the concept that where exactly we are getting the 1 from. Once again, a brief recap. For the first year, under the compounding interest, we know that in the first year itself, the interest which we are earning on the principal, it becomes the new principal. So for F1, the formula which we are using is that P plus P into I, wherein P is our principal and P into I is the interest which we are getting on the principal. Therefore, the formula takes the shape of F1 is equal to P plus F1 is equal to P plus PI. And then again, further simplifying it, when we take the P common, we are left with 1 plus I. So, even if you're taking it F1 is equal to P within bracket 1 plus I, the formula is actually the same as the mother formula, wherein F1 is equal to P plus PI, where P is the principal and P into I is the interest on the principal. The moment we are adding the principal and the interest on the principal, we are getting the future value F1, that is P plus PI, or $110 in the case of the simple example which I took forth with you. So again, if you take a look at F1 is equal to P into 1 plus I, it means what? Does it not look like Fn is equal to P plus 1 plus I to the power of 1? Because it is just 1 year. It is meant for 1 year. Therefore, Fn we can just we can reformulate it like this way. N is equal to 1 because time is 1. Therefore, F1 is equal to P 1 plus I to the n power of n. N is equal to 1. So, in either since it is not a habit of we do not usually show the power of 1 or a power of 0 over there. It is understood that when P into 1 plus I has been raised to 1 year, when the future n is only restricted for 1 year. Therefore, P1 is equal to P within bracket 1 plus I. Now students, this logic, this simple logic can be applied for successive number of years too. This logic we used for this simple explanation, we used keeping in mind the n is equal to 1, but in the real life the n is not too short. The n can go up to 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, whatever the time frame can be. So even if it is going for 25, 30 years or even for a perpetual time frame, the basic formula remains the same, the conceptual formula remains the same, wherein we use the F1 is equal to P plus P into I, and we take the P common and then we are left with 1 plus I, and thereafter, once we are having the basic structure of F is equal to P multiplied by 1 plus I, it can be raised to any number of years. It can be used for any for any stretch of time, for any length of time, but keeping the basic concept as the same which I just discussed. Now, let's take it further in case of the successive years also. Now, for the second year, Now, over here, look very carefully, students. Again, it is a bit of a basic algebra, a very rudimentary algebra, but it is very simple and very interesting, but very important. Now, for the second year, F2. Till now, we are talking about F1 or the first year. Now, we shall be talking about the F2 or the second year. So, for the second year, as I said, now just try to recollect in your mind that what did I say during my original discussion? That under the compound interest, under the process of compounding, your interest becomes your new principal. Your interest becomes your new principal. So, students, now again recollect the simple example which we talked about in terms of $100, which is increasing by 10%. So, it means your P was 100 USD, which increased by P into I, that is 100 into 10% of it, that is 10 USD. So, your future F1 at the end of the first year, your total future value of 100 USD was 110 USD. Your future value for 100 USD growing at the rate of 10% interest compounded annual after 1 year goes up to 110 USD. Now for the second year, if we are extending our formula for suppose 3 years or 4 years on the line, wherein every year it goes on increasing by 10% compound interest compounded annually, then for the second year, your new principal will be $110. For the second year students, your new principal shall be $110 instead of the $100 which we got initially. Under compound interest, the new principal becomes the existing principal plus the additional interest which we got on that principal. So by taking this formula, by adhering to this formula, by going by this formula, for the second year or F2, our new P or our new principal shall increase up to 110 USD. So our new principal is becoming our existing principal plus the interest of 10% on a principal, that is 110. So students, if we replace the word 110 USD by within bracket P1 plus I, then is it a wrong concept to follow? Absolutely not. We can write it as either it is 110, because 110, $100 and 10% increasing, the increase on the thereupon by compounded interest, it's just a simple formula. It's just a simple example I'm just giving to you. But from formula point of view, can't we say safely that P1 plus I which we got at the end of the first year, that becomes eligible to become the new P for the second year? Of course you can say like this. Of course you can say like this. It is very simple that this P at the beginning of the F2, your new principal becomes the old principal which we had. Try to keep in mind when you're starting the second year, by the start of the second year, our new principal becomes the old principal and the interest thereupon, that is $110. So we can depict it by this way, we can show it by this way, that at the beginning of the second year, our new principal is the existing old principal plus the interest thereupon, that is P within bracket 1 plus I to the power of 1. Actually it is raised to the power of 1, but since we do not write 1, it is a P within bracket 1 plus I which we got at the end of the last year or the end of the first year. Get this thing very clear in your mind, my dear students. The term P within bracket 1 plus I has been fetched as the principal and the interest thereupon which we got at the end of the last year or the end of the first year. So adhering to the concept that the interest becomes a new principal for the next year, we can take the concept forward, and at the start of the second year, our new principal, I once again repeat, our new principal or our new P is nothing but the old principal and the interest which has been added on the existing P, which we are showing by the way of P within bracket 1 plus I. So when P within bracket 1 plus I takes the form of a new P, so this new P is nothing but it is a P plus I. So the new P, that is a P within bracket 1 plus I, should also increase by another 10%. Is it not, students? Obviously yes, because for the first year when $100 increased by 10%, it becomes 110 USD. So at the start of the second year, this 110 USD becomes our new principal. So at the start of the second year, $110 becomes our new principal, which again is eligible to increase by another 10% by the end of the second year. Once again, students, at the beginning of the second year, our new principal is the old principal plus interest, that is $110 in the case of the 100 USD example which I was discussing with you. So when at the end of the first year our principal plus interest was 110, is it not so that the same principal plus interest shall become our new principal at the beginning of the second year? Of course it will be. So at the beginning of the second year, our new principal will be P within bracket 1 plus I, and throughout the second year, this P within bracket 1 plus I is eligible to increase by another rate of 10%. So our new principal, that is $110, is eligible to increase by another 10%, so that the future value at the end of the F2 or Fn2 can be ascertained. In order to ascertain the future value at the end of the F2 or the second year, we have to increase the new principal, or we have to multiply the 10% interest compounded annual to the new principal, which is P1 plus I, which is the last principal plus interest of the last year. So the principal plus interest of the last year becomes the new principal at the beginning of the second year, and throughout the second year, the new principal, that is P1 plus I, it grows by I%. So 110, it grows by another 10%. So numerical value terms, your F2 will be 110 multiplied by 110 into 10 by 100. So in the next financial year, or in the very next year, our F2, or the amount which we shall be getting at the end of the F2, shall be the F1, that is P1 plus I, and the 10% increase thereupon, that is P1 plus I into I%. So 110 plus 10% of 110 will be the final value of the $100, which is increasing by I% compound interest for 2 years. Initially we started with 1 year, then we took the concept forward to the 2 years. So at the end of by the end of the second year, the final cash receipt will be 110 plus 10% of 110. In formula point of view, it will be F2 will be P within bracket 1 plus I plus P within bracket 1 plus I multiplied by I%. That is $100, which has increased by 10% at the end of the first year, thereby making it 110. At the beginning of the second year, 110, which is growing for the entire year, plus 10% on the 110, which is being added back to my original $110 that is being shown by P1 plus I. Therefore, in formula point of view, at the end of the F2, we are getting P1 within bracket 1 plus I plus P within bracket 1 plus I multiplied by 10% on P1 plus I. Therefore, this is the formula for the F2. Students, I earnestly hope that you are grasping the concepts, you are getting the concepts a bit more clear. So don't get intimidated by the formulation part. Derivations are quite simple. Just try to understand the concept clearly, and the entire process shall become very, very easy. And indeed, this entire process is easy. So the calculations might seem a bit scary, but they are not so. Please pay attention and you will get through it. Okay, student, that's all for now. In the next session, we shall be taking this concept forward. Thank you.